Good morning, everyone. We're going to get started, and as we go around in this room, pun intended, I see a lot of great energy here in Central Pennsylvania this morning. Thank you, Toby. So, welcome to the PA Chamber's 2024 Annual Environmental Conference. My name is Luke Bernstein. I'm the President and CEO of the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry. And we look forward to this event each year, and this has become an incredible tradition for us to start and talk and continue our conversation about how Pennsylvania can be the energy capital of the world, and we can do it environmentally sound, and we can do it environmentally friendly as we lead the next generation. We look forward to this event because we bring policymakers, energy leaders, environmental professionals across Pennsylvania and the country who come here, talk about how they are shaping energy policy and driving innovation across the energy sector. This is a unique event that we all come together to share ideas, best practices, and insights while making sure that we're up to date on the latest regulatory policies that will shape and define our world. This has become a great tradition for us, and at the Chamber, I told this story recently, we started another tradition not too long ago this year. We're 108 years old, so we're trying to start things that work and things that might not work. And we found out one thing that does not work this year. This is a conference that does work. But we started sending flowers to all of our members when we go to ribbon cutting. And we either send them flowers or a plant, and we'd send a nice little note. Congratulations, on all the new success you've had. And we did that recently, and then we sent the day before, and I showed up for the ribbon cutting. And I went up, and the CEO pulled me aside, and he said, Luke, he said, we really appreciate the flowers, but this is really awkward. And I said, oh, no. I said, well, did your wife get these flowers? I mean, what happened here? And he said, no. He said, I got the flowers, but the card said, please accept our sincere condolences. I'm deeply sorry for your loss. And I said, oh, my God. I said, if you think this is awkward, wait until I show up to my friend's family's funeral tonight, because their card says, congratulations on your new location. So that is a tradition we will not be continuing this year. This environmental conference that talks about all the different moving parts in Pennsylvania is one. And as we look at Pennsylvania and the importance of energy, I don't think we can, we're sitting about 12 days from a very critical election, and you're seeing ad after ad talking about energy and different policies and the impacts of Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania's energy future and how we maximize our assets to strengthen and maintain our standing as a leading energy producer and exporter is critical to our state's economy and to the U.S. economy. One vital piece of this is grid reliability. And that's a future of electric supply and what that looks like, and we'll talk about that today a great deal. We also have a panel discussion today focused on another extremely important part of our energy and environmental puzzle, and that's permitting reform. More specifically, the SPEED program that was recently enacted by the state legislature, signed by the governor, and that is being implemented right now by the administration. We supported that bill. We're a key part of it, but that would not have happened without State Senator Kristen Phillips-Hill and her initiative, and a friend of ours that's here today, State Senator Jean Yaw, who has been on the front lines pushing for policies to ensure that we can build things faster in Pennsylvania and do it environmentally friendly and sound. And Senator Yaw is here with us today. Let's give him a round of applause. And the SPEED program is not just a fancy acronym. It is literally speeding up and designed to speed up construction and building processes, helping to reduce delays and timelines so that businesses can get faster responses and jobs can continue to happen, both jobs of those that we employ and construction jobs here in Pennsylvania. Our agenda includes an all-important air and water update. That is what this conference has become known and well known for, along with your ability to network, see some of the different exhibitors around the hall, earn some continuing education credits, and just spend time together talking about the importance of Pennsylvania and our energy and environmental future. So thank you again for being here. We'll kick a couple things off. There's a QR code on the table tents at your table. Your agenda is there. There's a digital link to the conference agenda and other key metrics that are on there. You'll also notice another QR code at the information sheets at your table for a survey to fill out. That helps us improve our programming if you're willing to submit that and send it back to us. I'd also like to mention that those of you in the room that are attorneys, professional engineers, land surveyors, geologists, industrial hygienists, and other key professions can all earn professional development hours for attending today's conference. You'll receive the post-event email with details on how you can do that and get credit for those hours. But we could not do this event or any of the events we do without the support of our members and our sponsors. And so today's exclusive platinum sponsor is Pennsylvania American Water, a subsidiary of American Water and the largest investor-owned water utility in Pennsylvania, providing high quality and reliable water and wastewater services to approximately 2.3 million people across Pennsylvania. Let's give Pennsylvania American Water a nice round of applause. Our silver sponsors include EQT, a future-focused leading natural gas producer with operations in Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and Ohio. RT Environmental Services, Inc., an environmental engineering, consulting, and remediation firm with services throughout Mid-Atlantic United States. Let's give them both a round of applause. And our bronze sponsors, K&L Gates, as well as today's break sponsor, Baps Cowan Attorneys at Law. Let's give them a round of applause as well. We could not do these events, as I said, without the generous support of our sponsors. And today, because of their support, we've been able to bring an incredible program with us that is carried live. You'll see in the back in PCN today. It was our friends viewing from out Pennsylvania. But I'm excited about the program because we're going to start this morning off right. We have an incredible speaker that if you did not get your coffee, I don't think you're going to need as much this morning. If you did not get a good night's sleep last night, that is okay because our next speaker is going to wake you up and give you incredible insights about the future of energy in America. You're going to hear from one of the leading energy innovators in natural gas. He's on the forefront of so many different energy leading initiatives and the vision. We talk about thought leaders in America. When we talk about energy, we have one of the best in the room today. Toby Rice is the president and CEO of EQT Corporation. He is a visionary of the future of energy, redefining what it means to be an energy pioneer and an environmental steward. Since taking the helm of EQT in July of 2019, Toby has led a remarkable transformation. Under his leadership, EQT has achieved a 35% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions and now boasts one of the lowest methane intensities among natural gas producers worldwide. EQT is also setting new industry standards with its ambitious goal to reach net zero Scope 1 and 2 GHG emissions by or before 2025. Moreover, Toby has been instrumental in ensuring diversity within EQT's leadership, achieving 50% female representation on the company's board of directors, a milestone that reflects his commitment to inclusivity. Toby's passion for unleashing the future of American energy extends beyond corporate initiatives. As a champion for energy security, he advocates for U.S. energy independence and its role in supporting our global allies. That is a critical piece as we look forward in the rest of the geopolitics that's going on right now in the world. America and Pennsylvania's role in spreading democracy throughout our world is significantly important, and it all comes back to energy. A champion for energy security, he has been on the forefront of this. His insight and influence extend way beyond the industry. He's appeared at premier energy conferences all over the world. He's a trusted voice, and you can often see him on CNN, CNBC, and Bloomberg. I see him on CNBC all the time, so it's good to see you here in person as well. Toby's chairing our PA Chambers Foundation Keystone Initiative. He's a co-chair of that, which is setting a long-term economic strategy so Pennsylvania can be the #1 state in the country to do business. Energy production, the economic benefits, and doing it environmentally responsible is at the heart of that strategy. Beyond his leadership at EQT and with the Keystone Initiative, Toby co-founded Rice Investment Group, where he shapes the future of energy investing all across different energy sectors. He also serves on the Bipartisan Policy Center's American Energy Innovation Council, the American Exploration and Production Council's Executive Committee, underscoring that further engagement of the policy dimension in energy innovation. He has worked to underscore the critical importance of collaboration in building stronger communities. Toby, I could go on, but the most exciting part is going to be hearing from you this morning. So let's give a warm PA Chamber welcome to a leader who embodies innovation, progress, and responsibility, our friend EQT's President CEO, Toby Rice.
That was one of the greatest introductions of all time. Thank you so much. That was very, very generous. You know, today we're going to talk about energy, and some of the things I want to show you all really is just to help shape perspective, because energy has become incredibly political, and a lot of people are talking about it, and they should be talking about it because energy is important. Energy is the driving force behind our economy. People know that the more energy people use, the better the quality of life. It's that simple. So I've been traveling all around the world talking about energy because I believe that we're getting it wrong as it relates to energy, and we need to talk about this. I mean, as an example, we go to climate conferences, and we traveled to Dubai last year for COP. Now, Dubai, in the middle of a desert, it's now sprung into being an oasis, one of the most modern, safest, most prosperous cities in the world. Only in this world would people fly in planes across the world to a place that's been transformed by fossil fuels to protest fossil fuels. I would highly recommend anyone to go to these climate conferences. The COP29 this year is going to be in Azerbaijan. That's a little bit of a haul for people. It's a big time investment. So if you can't get there, I'd say if you want to experience a climate conference, the closest thing I can think of is go to a Bitcoin conference. There's a lot of similarities there. You know, at a Bitcoin conference, you get a real strong sense of community. It's almost cult-like. You've got euphoric optimism. You've got people having bold visions, making bold plans, taking massive risk. Some outsiders would say that it's really not investing, it's uninformed, degenerate gambling. And there are a lot of similarities there. But I would tell you, one of the biggest differences between climate and Bitcoin is that Bitcoin enthusiasts will only bankrupt themselves. When we're talking about climate, we have the opportunity to bankrupt a country. It's an incredibly important distinction here. Who in this room would let Bitcoin people dictate our financial policy? Why in the hell are we letting non-energy experts dictate our energy policy? And I'll tell you why. It's because people are scared. People are confused. We are not going to ignore that. People are taking action. They're protesting. Their concerns over climate has put them in a situation where to protest the complete stopping of using fossil fuels, people are gluing their hands to the sidewalk. Now think about how ridiculous that is. People that are saying we should stop using fossil fuels cannot even protest fossil fuels without using fossil fuels. They're throwing paint on masterpieces. They're destroying our culture. They're willing and able to do this. And left unchecked, their pursuit to do the right thing will present a lot of challenges to this country and change our way of life. This is what's happening now. We've got to get this right. for our communities, for our businesses, for our state, for our country, for our allies around the world, for the billions that are less fortunate than us living in undeveloped nations. They're counting on us to get it right. We've got to get it right. So just to give you guys a little bit more background, even though Luke did a fantastic job there, I started my first business in energy. And Rice Energy was started because we wanted to help bring energy independence to America. And, fortunately, we were able to grow that business into a top 10 producer of natural gas and sold that and made $1 billion. That was a great business. We've also invested in climate. And during the interim period, we invested in a company and helped grow one of the largest, a company that started here in Pennsylvania and transformed it into the largest renewable natural gas company in the world. And we made $1 billion there. Now, I will tell you this one thing, just keep this in mind. When I was actually reflecting on this coming up, it was a heck of a lot easier to make money in climate. Way easier. We did that in 3 years. Rice Energy was a grind over 10 years. Just keep that in the back of your mind. It's really easy, a lot easier to make money in energy when you're looking at climate versus the traditional. Because you know why? This is the hard work that we're doing over here, and it's also the most impactful. So today, where we sit, it's never been a more important time for us to produce energy in this country. The Russia-Ukraine situation is still a thing. This AI boom that's coming out is going to require a ton of energy. If you want a fun conversation, talk to somebody in the military about the AI applications for military purposes. It's kind of scary stuff. Some people are saying that the technology developments with AI for weapons will render nuclear bombs obsolete. Never been more important time for us to produce energy. It's also never been more difficult time for us to produce energy. We built fewer miles of pipelines last year on an annual basis than we had in the prior 30 years. The last big pipeline that got built in this country, MVP, required an act of Congress to get built. It's never been more difficult. Now, we say this to people, and we carry this message to DC and tell people it's never been more important, it's never been more difficult. And people say, Tobe, that's BS. It can't be that hard because we're producing record amounts of energy in this country. And that's true. We are producing record amounts of oil and gas. We are the world leader in oil production. We are the world leader in natural gas production. We are the world leader in exporting LNG, and we are producing more energy in this country today than we ever had before. But what people need to understand is not stand there with our mouths open looking at how much this is and say, wow, that's a lot. We need to ask a question, is it enough? Look at the world around us and ask yourself that question. Rampant inflation, war in Ukraine, civil unrest in the Middle East, energy security of our allies is crippled, energy poverty in this world is now increasing, and there's tremendous amount of problems that we're facing. Oh, and by the way, emissions are still skyrocketing. We need to be doing more. And thankfully, the United States, we are blessed with two things: an amazing resource under our feet and an amazing industry, the oil and gas industry, that has helped bringing this energy independence to America. And now we have the opportunity to bring energy security not only to our country, but to the world, and also help lower global emissions. So I'm going to show you guys, when I tell people, these stats that there's a lot of big problems in the world, they're in shock naturally. Having these opportunities here to give you guys some slides, I can actually show you some of the data that we're looking at. And we'll talk about the world issues. We'll look at the industry scoreboard. We'll actually show you a focus on what we've done in Pennsylvania, which has been tremendous. And then we'll talk about some of the global challenges here. But to the point on energy production, this is big picture stuff, is what the theme of this talk is going to be. All big picture. This is the amount of energy that we're producing in America. If you take the oil and gas and you normalize it and put it on a BOE basis, barrel of oil equivalent, the United States is producing over 30 million barrels a day of energy, okay? And we are in an election year, and so I highlighted the last Republican administration and the growth of production, and you can see that in red. And I also are showing this last 4 years. And guess what? Energy is still increasing, even under this administration. But look at the rate of change. It's slowed dramatically. It's a signal that it's become much more difficult to get energy built and energy delivered in this administration. Global emissions are still skyrocketing. Despite some pretty historic things that have taken place in energy over the last couple of years, this last year, solar and wind investments will be greater than oil and gas in the world. First time it's ever happened. How's that working out for us? Is that making any impact on lowering emissions? No, it's not working. And energy prices are screaming. During this administration, we've seen energy prices increase over 35%. That is the root cause of the inflation that is crushing Americans. 65% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. You want to fix inflation? Fix energy. And this is the one that gives me a ton of concern. For the first time in 20 years since the IEA started measuring this stat, the first time in 20 years, energy poverty in this world is increasing. The number of people living without access to electricity for the first time in 20 years increased last year. Now, when you look at this chart, I want you to look at the historical data here. Ever since we started tracking this, we have been able to pull more people out of energy poverty. We've reduced the number of people living without electricity. But you can see very clearly on that line something changed. There's an inflection point in 2018 where our ability to pull people out of energy poverty stopped and reversed, and now it's increasing. Now, there's a lot of factors that go into something like this. I'm not going to simplify it by saying it's one thing, but what happened in 2018? As an energy professional, I will tell you 2018 for me was very clear. That is when ESG hit the front lines. That's when ESG actually started making a difference in the way people were investing and restricting their investments in the most affordable, reliable, cleanest energy, and started being driven by political force. 2018 is when we saw the pipeline cancellation movement start in this country. And that is, we'll show you the impact of that in some future slides. 2018 is when it changed. And the lesson here is we just need to think about this. What we do in the developed world has ripple effects across the world. And I just want all of us to think, thank goodness that we're born in this country. Thank goodness we have the access to energy that we have. But what if you were born in one of those undeveloped countries? What if you were raising your daughter or your son in that undeveloped nation? And the one thing you need to improve the quality of your life, energy, you can't get. These people are depending on us to get it right because our surplus that we create here in this country is their opportunity. These people need us. And 3 billion people live on less electricity than it takes to run a fridge. What we're doing here is creating an adverse impact to billions around the world. And energy security is crippled. I believe the energy security of the world is at risk. This chart is really, really interesting, showing the net energy imports. If you are on the higher end of that scale, you're an energy importer. If you're on the bottom, you're an energy exporter. You're either dependent or you're independent. And look at these two countries that are on the top, or two areas. You've got Europe and China. Now, one thing I want to call out. So these countries have massive dependency on bringing in energy. One thing to call out with Europe, who's been the world leader in renewables? It's been Europe. Almost 25% of their energy comes from solar and wind. Look at that chart. Has that made any difference to their energy dependence? Not really. In China, that is a huge force that we need to be able to look at these places and say, can we help these countries if we want to meet our energy security and global emissions goals? There's one country on this chart that has made a major difference, and that's the United States, and we'll cover that in a couple slides. But it's not just the security of the world that's at risk. This is happening in our country. And grid reliability, which we have a panel after this, they're going to talk about this. Experts in the U.S. are questioning our energy security, and they're putting out slides like this, which really don't mean a lot to the normal person. So we've simplified this chart to basically explain that our grid security is based on our ability, how much power can we generate to cover our needs? How much power do we need? And as long as we have a greater ability than our needs, we have a secure grid. And this looks good. And you can look back at today with that dashed line and say, oh, it's not as much security as we used to have, but we still have security. Well, then peel back the onion one layer and realize that not all power generation sources are equal. And look at the amount of power that we generate that's dispatchable and firm. That's coal, that's natural gas, that's nuclear. And you realize that our reliable power generation sources are pretty much in sync with the peak demand. And you realize that our grid security is completely dependent on unreliable solar and wind. What happens if the wind doesn't blow? What happens if the sun doesn't shine? What happens if those 4-hour batteries run out? We need to take a look at this. Now that's in Texas. But this phenomenon, our grid security, the buffer between our ability and our needs, is shrinking across every grid, across every part of this country. And here's a challenge. Energy demand, electricity demand is increasing. You can see here, power demand in the U.S., since 2000, we've been sort of static and haven't really been needing to generate more electricity. And so as we've ripped out reliable power generation like coal, we've replaced it with reliable power generation, natural gas. And that's allowed natural gas to grow while electricity demand is staying flat. Well, that's ending. Power demand is going to increase, whether it's electric vehicles, the CHIPS Act, onshoring manufacturing, which we should all be championing in this room, the move to AI and the massive power needs that's going to create. It's happening in the U.S., it's happening around the world. And in our backyard, in PJM, our grid, we're seeing massive revisions upwards on what the electricity demands are going to be. Look at our estimates of PJM in 2021, that gray line at the bottom. The estimates now are 2.5, 3 times greater than what we thought just a couple years ago. It's getting bigger. And where's it coming from? You can see the chart on the right where this is coming. So the challenges is going to be even more difficult in Pennsylvania. Now, there's going to be people that will say, well, you know what? We've been energy champions for you guys because you guys are still growing, and we've helped. You hear people now talk about how they support our industry. You want to know why we're successful? You want to know why we're producing record amounts of energy? This is the real story. It's because of our industry. Our industry has been massively innovative and really done some really amazing things. Looking at gas, this is a chart that shows the rigs, gas production in blue, and rigs in red, the resources we need to actually get this production. What you'll see is that we've almost doubled production in this country, and at a time we've taken the resources needed by a factor of 5 or 6. When you look at this efficiency, U.S. gas efficiency measured by production per rig, our industry is incredible. We've seen a 25-fold increase in the efficiency of this industry. That's what's keeping the lights on against all of these barrages that we're dealing with every single day. Now in Pennsylvania, it's an even cooler story. Same thing, rigs in red, production in blue. And the story is absolutely tremendous. In less than 15 years, we've gone from producing relatively no energy in this state to producing almost over 20 BCF a day. And rigs, which used to have 100 rigs in Pennsylvania, is now less than 20. Massive efficiencies. 45-fold increase in efficiencies here. I mean, it is so remarkable. That was my face when I put these numbers together. This is the technology innovative space. We talk about embracing technology. It's this industry. It's happening right now. Imagine if we actually had some support for our industry, what we could do. And everybody wants to talk about, when they look at the alternatives, they will show you the hockey style sticks on wind penetration and solar penetration. Well, let's put our success into perspective. Look at, when we ask the question, how fast have new energy sources grown? Comparing U.S. shale gas to solar and wind, not even close. U.S. shale to matching the power that we've received from U.S. shale gas, not even close. Orders of magnitude better. When we're thinking about rebuilding our energy ecosystem, I think we should be using the most impactful, powerful solutions that we have available to us. And again, just a reminder, it's important that we get this right, because energy use does improve the quality of life, and this is why I'm in this industry. You know, when I sold Rice Energy, fortunately, I was lucky enough to not have to be driven by money. And for me, the next chapter of my life was making an impact. And there's a lot of ways you can do that in this world. You start a business, you can go into public service, you could be a teacher, charity work. But when I saw this chart, everything became crystal clear to me. The more energy you put into this world, the better the quality of life will be. And if you want to make an impact in this world, find a way to bring more energy into it. And that's what drives us every single day. And you know, we're in a place now where we've got some really bizarre things that are happening. You know, and people are confused and they're scratching their heads and asking why. How can we have such a tremendous energy resource in this country? How can we be the world leader in producing energy, but energy bills in this country for Americans are up 35%? How does that happen? How does it make sense that our emissions are still going up around the world when the United States has lowered their emissions by over 1 billion tons in the last 15 years? How does that happen? All of these bizarre things that are happening, it's because political force has overwhelmed market forces. And if you want to get back to fixing this, we've got to get back to a world where market forces drive the cheapest, most reliable, cleanest energy to the marketplace. And the question to our leaders is, one, understand the scoreboard. Things are not going well. We need to change this. And our leaders need to ask themselves a question. How can they help? How can we help bring some political force back to the best solutions that are available to us? How can we incentivize affordable energy making its way to the market? How do we incentivize reliability? What are the incentives? We need them. How are we incentivizing the carbon intensity, the clean aspects of our energy? There's a ton of incentives out there, but does anybody really understand what they are? We have an opportunity as leaders to elect leaders in Pennsylvania, in this country, that will work to set the right incentives and work with industry to make sure that the most reliable, cleanest, most affordable energy makes its way to the marketplace. And with support, imagine what we could do. In the United States, this is what we're playing for. We have the opportunity in this country, thanks to the shale revolution, to increase natural gas production over 50%, creating 60 BCF a day of energy surplus in this country. Now, our Unleash US LNG initiative would allow you to say, we can use that energy to provide energy security to our allies. We can use that energy to replace coal overseas. Coal is the biggest source of emissions on the planet. And putting 60 BCF a day of natural gas on the water to replace coal will be the single greatest green initiative on the planet, reducing emissions over 1 billion tons. And it's an absolutely amazing thing that we have the ability to do. And from an energy security perspective, this crisis that we're dealing with, when faced with a crisis, understand who's fixing these things. It's the United States. 20 years ago, we found ourselves in a crisis. America was energy dependent. We're at the top of the scale. But look what happened. In 2008, we cracked the code on shale, unleashed hydraulic fracturing and horizontal drilling, and transformed America from being energy dependent to being an energy powerhouse on the world stage. We got our independence. That engine is still running today. Stifled, but if we blew some air into that fire, we could do some really amazing things. And the thing that drives me the craziest, I think about this whole conversation, is when people start talking about, well, how much energy does the world need? Does Europe need 5 BCF a day to replace Russia? Or do they need 10 BCF a day to replace their coal? Let's stop all this. Let's go real big picture. People are not going to stop caring about the concerns over climate. And that means people should not stop caring about reducing the biggest source of emissions on this planet, which is coal. It would take 170 BCF a day of natural gas to replace just the existing coal that's being used to generate power today. And the other thing I'd call out on that chart is you look at the forecast of coal. And our leaders get shown these charts, and they'll say, oh, guess what? Coal's just going to go away because look at the forecast. It's showing that it's decreasing. Sorry, news break. These forecasts are wrong. We're using more coal today as a world than we ever have before in the history of the world. And guess what? Tomorrow, we're going to use more coal. And we're going to keep using more coal unless we give the people that are using coal something better. We've got that something better. It's called natural gas. It's LNG in the United States being sourced right here from Pennsylvania, being shipped around the world to give them a better option. And for the people that care about energy poverty, which I believe we should care about our planet, we should also care about the people living on it. The people that are living in energy poverty, the 3 billion that are living on less electricity than it takes to run a fridge, the people that are using wood and dung as their primary source of energy, that's biomass. It would require another 120 BCF a day to replace the biomass that's being used today. Added up, we're talking about over 300 BCF a day of more natural gas demand that's needed. In a market, a global market that's 400 BCF a day, the world is calling for 75% more natural gas. If you care about emissions, if you care about energy poverty. And I think everybody in this room does care about those things. That resource that we have, that ability to increase production 50% to 60 BCF a day of natural gas surplus, 35 BCF a day of that can come from Pennsylvania. That is amazing. Now you say, Tobe, Appalachia right now is producing 35 BCF a day. Look at all the benefits that we've received thanks to Marcellus Shale. The tens of thousands of jobs, the cleaner energy that we're using to keep to produce some of the cleanest air we've ever benefited from, the royalties that we're paying to our communities, the billions that we've paid to the state in taxes. All that came from what we're doing today. I'm telling you, we have the opportunity to double those type of benefits if we can get leaders and regulations in place that will allow us to unleash American energy, not stifle it. The environmental impact of doing this, of unleashing American energy, putting that much energy to replace coal would have the environmental equivalent to electrifying every vehicle in the country, putting solar panels on every house, and doubling U.S. wind production combined. It's massive. It's the biggest green initiative on the planet. What can this do for energy security for Americans and our allies around the world? 60 BCF a day doesn't mean a lot to the normal person, okay? 60 BCF a day is the energy equivalent of over 10 million barrels a day of clean energy. It's like adding a Saudi Arabia of energy to the world stage. Clean. That's going to be a decarbonizing force. It's going to bring a tremendous amount of peace and prosperity to the world. It will replace the energy that the petro dictators are selling with American democracy. This is such an amazing opportunity. This is one of the biggest opportunities, I think, in front of us. It's absolutely incredibly important that we get it right. Now, we want to get to a place where we let market forces drive It is going to take the business community to stand up and start helping drive some of these solutions. So we are really excited about partnering with Luke and the PA Chamber to use this Keystone Initiative as the vehicle for us to implement some of these changes to the regulatory environment, but also start thinking about incentivizing the types of energy we want and the energy system that we want to create, to incentivize affordable, reliable, clean energy. So we're excited about moving this forward, and understand this. Pennsylvania has done so much for this country, and Pennsylvania has benefited so much from that service. We are just getting started with the right leaders unleashing American energy. We can do some pretty amazing global transformative things. So I hope, I'll just close with this. I don't know if anybody went to go see Elon on Sunday. I was there. Yeah, you see him jumping up on stage. Elon's pretty socially awkward. He's not really comfortable being up there. He'll tell you he just wants to build rockets and cars. Yet we have this leader that is putting himself through tremendous sacrifice, putting his security at risk. I mean, he jokes about it, that he jokes about getting shot. It's not funny. But this leader is stepping up to raise awareness. And as a business leader here, it made me think, what if, and I want you all to think about this, November 6th, the day after the election, you wake up and your leader did not get elected. How are you going to feel? Are you going to have regret that we didn't do everything we could to get the right people in the right positions? We're gonna do everything we can to make sure that we get the right leaders, because I think it is absolutely critical, not for our business. This is where people get it confused. People think that we're out here fighting for our business. No, we're not fighting for our business. You know what we're fighting for? We're fighting for our customers, which is every single Pennsylvanian, every single American, and our allies around the world. And so hopefully everybody over this next 10, 12 days, I know everybody's going to be excited when this is over, we continue to drive and make sure we get the right people elected. That's the job at hand today, and then we're excited about picking up and coming up with some great ideas using the Keystone Initiative as the vehicle. So thank you guys for your time today. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to you all.
Good morning, everybody. All right. Can I get another? Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Thank you. Thank you, Toby. That was a great setup for our next panel, which I will be your moderator this morning. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Amy Brenton. I recently joined the Chamber as Director of Government Affairs for Energy and Environmental Issues. It's interesting for me to be on this side of the panel, as a lot of you know me from joining you on that side of the stage and the tables. So again, thank you for joining us. I'm excited to be on this side of the podium to moderate our panel discussion on perhaps one of the most talked about topics in energy, which we had our little preview, grid reliability, and concerns that despite Pennsylvania's status as a global energy leader and critical hub for both traditional and emerging energy markets, growing energy demand in the coming years won't be able to keep pace with our production due to a number of factors. The topic of grid resiliency has never been more critical. With increasing energy demands, challenges, and the evolving nature of our energy infrastructure, ensuring that our grid is robust, flexible, and capable of withstanding disruptions is paramount. So we have a very robust panel here for you this morning to discuss the various aspects of Pennsylvania's energy landscapes, concerns about grid reliability, and what we should do to address these concerns. So to start things off, and as I kind of transition over to sit with our esteemed panel, I'd like to kind of start down on the other side with Stephen. If you could introduce yourself, give a few brief background information, and then, as I said, we'll get started with the questions.
Great. So is this okay in the back? Everybody can hear? Okay. So good morning. My name is Stephen Bennett. I'm a senior manager of government affairs at PJM. PJM is the RTO that serves the Mid-Atlantic, 13 states, and the District of Columbia. And Pennsylvania is one of the states that we serve in total. So some states we serve partial, some states we serve in total. Pennsylvania is that. PJM's primary mission is reliability. Every day, the people of PJM wake up, and our focus, our mission, our job in life is to keep the lights on for 65 million people across the Mid-Atlantic region. We operate markets so that we can leverage the efficiency of markets to do that at the most cost-effective and cost-efficient manner as possible. We do transmission planning to make sure that the transmission grid meets the needs of today and into the future. And we have operations where we have control rooms where we're monitoring the grid on a 24/7 basis and dispatching generation to make sure that load and generation are matched on an instantaneous basis. I think that's good.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Name is Glenn Thomas, president of GT Power Group. Before starting GT Power Group, I spent the beginning part of my career actually as a legislative intern in the Pennsylvania Senate and as a legislative intern in the House of Representatives. Spent 6.5 years as Governor Tom Ridge's Energy and Environmental Policy Advisor. Spent 4 years on the Pennsylvania Public Utility Commission, both as a chairman and as a commissioner there. Started GT Power Group in 2007, mostly focused on PJM issues. It's great to see so many familiar faces in the crowd, so I appreciate the opportunity to be here. Following up a little bit on what Stephen said and maybe previewing a little bit what we'll talk about a little bit more. I mean, I think there's a really unique Pennsylvania story out there as it relates to energy. You heard a lot of that from Toby just a few minutes ago, but the P in PJM stands for Pennsylvania. That's appropriate, and Pennsylvania really provides a lot of what keeps PJM going in a lot of respects. And it's a very symbiotic relationship because in order for Pennsylvania to be successful and pursue the policies it wants to pursue, we need PJM and its wholesale markets to be producing the appropriate price signals, providing the reliability, providing the grid security that's going to allow us to do that. So very much look forward to the conversation and appreciate the opportunity to be here.
My name is Gene Yaw. I have been in the Senate now 16 years. I chair the Senate Environmental Resources and Energy Committee. Excuse me. And been involved, obviously. My district is all of Union County. I have 5 counties. Union County, Lycoming County, Sullivan County, Bradford County, and Tioga. At one point, and I haven't checked this recently, my district was responsible for production of about 65% of all the gas that was produced in Pennsylvania. We have dry gas where we are, which means it's virtually pipeline quality. There's some water vapor needs to be taken out of it, but other than that, so I've been involved. I guess the best way to describe it is, I'm a motorhead. I love equipment, motors, things like that. So when the gas industry came, it was something that I really got involved in. And as chairman of the committee, we've been involved in a lot of things. We were successful with the long lateral bill, which laterals are now being drilled 20,000 feet. Some things like that. We recently did the carbon capture bill, which may or may not come up here. But listening to Toby, I mean, my philosophy is this, and I don't know whether any of you have heard of a person by the name of Dr. Scott Tinker. He's kind of my guru, he's endowed professor at the University of Texas in Austin. I think he's also the state geologist of Texas. His theory about organized society, every organized society in the world is based on three things. It's based, the core base is energy. And with energy, you can build an economy. And with an economy, then you can deal with the environment. And just think about that. Now, if you're worried about, am I going to be able to eat? And Toby talked about places where they don't have, they use wood or dung for power or energy. And you're worried about eating, do you really care about the environment? So the best thing that we can do from my perspective, from the environmental perspective, is the better our economy is, the more likely that we can deal with the environmental issues. And that's kind of been my guiding, the way that things that I look at things and what we've done. All that fits in with one of the things that I actually have said this for years. Pennsylvania has the most diverse energy portfolio in the country. Yeah, I mean, we have everything here. And I'm sorry, Maryland, if you don't have the same things that we have, but I am so tired of people apologizing and for what Pennsylvania has. And we have gone through that for years. Pennsylvania has not accepted its position to be one of the leaders, not only in the United States, but in the world. About 3 years ago, I know I did some rough number calculation is that Pennsylvania alone produced about 1/3 as much natural gas as Russia. Just think about that. Little Pennsylvania, sometimes we are not attuned to just how Pennsylvania fits into the entire energy market. And those are kind of some of the philosophies that guide me with what we do, what we try and do in the Senate, and what I try to accomplish by talking to people like this group. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Terry Fitzpatrick, President of the Energy Association of Pennsylvania. We're a trade group that represents the electric utilities and the natural gas utilities in the Commonwealth. Electric utilities provide the bills to customers. So we're the ones that get the heat if energy gets unreliable, which means it gets more expensive. So of course we have a huge interest in maintaining grid reliability. My own personal background, I started out as a lawyer at the PUC. I was a member of the Pennsylvania Environmental Hearing Board, writing decisions on environmental matters. Later on, I was counsel to the committee that Senator Yaw now chairs, the Environmental Resources and Energy Committee in the Senate of PA. While I was there, along with a lot of other people, I helped to draft Pennsylvania's electric restructuring law, along with Glenn, who was then working in the governor's office. I went on to become a member of the Pennsylvania PUC, including chairman for a couple of years. I went on after that, I worked for a group of electric generators, the Electric Power Generation Association, a group which is no longer in existence. And for the last 15 years, I've been a president of EAP. So we have a very strong interest in maintaining grid reliability. I have a lot of thoughts on that, but I'll save that for the questions from Amy.
Thank you all. So what we're going to start, I'm going to start with kind of a more broad question to kind of discuss the grid reliability topic. So I want to focus our attention on the generation resource adequacy, which, as most of us know, was highlighted in PJM's 3 Rs report in February of 2023. It was a 4 Rs. I'm sorry. My first big gaffe up here. I'm sorry. Energy transition in PJM, resources, retirements, replacements, and risks. If I would have counted the Rs, I would have known that. Can you please share your perspective on resource adequacy and PJM's reports? What are your thoughts of the nature, the cause of the issue we're facing that were identified in the report? Maybe some potential solutions. Do you think this is something that Pennsylvania can do on our own? Should we be cooperating with other PJM states? I know that's kind of a large, broad 3 kind of questions I throw at you, but I would love to get your take as we start, we'll start. Stephen, if you want to kind of kick it off for us.
Sure. So I'm trying to prevent some of that feedback. So PJM has actually, for a number of years now, been talking about a change in direction on supply and demand. So for a number of years, the PJM region, and really the United States as a whole, saw a very flat demand growth situation. We had done a wonderful job from an efficiency perspective in really driving efficiency in industrial processes, commercial processes, lighting, transportation, and things of that nature. And during that period, we were also blessed with length in generation. So we had flat demand and we had plenty of generation. A few years ago, we realized that that trend, or that scenario that we had lived through for a number of years, had pivoted and started to change. Load growth was returning, and some of it, as you saw in the keynote, the onshoring of industry, the transition to electrified transportation, a move to electrified heating and other building aspects. And what we were starting to see as well, at the same time as this load was starting to grow, is that we were starting to see generation come off of the system. And as that generation was coming off of the system, it wasn't being replaced at the same rate or at the same level. And we had seen this happen before, and it was touched on again in the keynote, where we started to see coal generation coming off the system and being replaced by natural gas. But in this case, as we were seeing some of these units come off, we weren't seeing the same one-for-one replacement. So PJM started to do some analysis that resulted in this 4R report that showed that the velocity of load growth and the velocity of generation retirement were no longer matched well to maintain the reserve margins and that generation link, that safety net that we had had in the past. So we started going to our states, to our state legislators, to our state commissions, to the governor's offices, to the larger entities like OPSI and those groups, and started vocalizing these trends that we were seeing. And at the time, and this was about 2 years ago when we started, my CEO, when he spoke, he'd said, listen, we're seeing challenging trends. Again, we're seeing this supply-demand balance starting to go in a direction that would be difficult, that could create price increases, that could, in an extreme case, create challenges to even just keeping the grid reliable. And at the time, his kind of line was, we have time to address this, but we don't have time to waste. Now, 2 years later, we're seeing all of those trends accelerate. Load growth, as you saw in that chart, is accelerating extensively, and that is the addition of data centers. So generative AI, the data center needs in this country, the AI race that, quite frankly, the United States is now on with the rest of the world, including China, has created load increases that we did not anticipate 5 years ago. The load growth curves, the amplitude is going up immensely. At the same time, we're seeing policies, both at the federal and the state level, accelerate generation retirement from the system as well. So we're seeing a situation where load is increasing, but supply is decreasing even faster than we recognized a couple of years ago. And in that situation, the fundamentals of supply and demand, the fundamentals of economics say that prices are going to go up. And we just held a capacity auction in July. So capacity and resource adequacy, basically the same thing. We held a capacity auction, and that auction had results that were many times greater than the auction just a year prior. So again, as we see supply decrease and demand increase, our markets are sending a price signal that says we need more generation to come onto the system. But we're seeing policies that make that difficult. So EPA policies and state policies that are driving generation off the grid and making it difficult for generators to build. If you look at the queue, so our interconnection queue, so the line of the queue of generators that are looking to interconnect to the PJM system, it is 98% renewables. And renewables are great. And we want to see as many renewables come online as possible. But that's pretty much all that we're seeing. And it's a renewable generator is not a one-for-one replacement for natural gas or coal on a capacity value. We accredit generation to say, what are the chances that you're going to be able to perform on the hottest day in the summer, the coldest day in the winter? Coldest night in the winter, I guess, really. And renewables just don't have the same level of accreditation as a natural gas plant or a nuclear plant or a coal plant. So we need to, when we're seeing fossil and thermal generation come off the grid, we need multiples of renewables to come on the grid to do that replacement. And we're just not seeing that happen fast enough. And so we continue to vocalize this concern to say that the supply-demand balance is starting to trend in the wrong direction and the velocity is increasing. I'll stop there.
And as we go through too, I want this to feel like more of a conversation. So please we don't have to go in order. If you want to, speak as we go, please feel free.
All right. Well, I'm happy to go next. Yeah, I agree with everything that Stephen just said. Let me maybe address 2 points. Are you on? Okay. We'll do my best. Okay. No, it's still there. Dang it. No, let me throw myself back here. Is that better? No? All right. That's probably better way to go about it. Okay, we're good. Maybe, like I said, I agree with everything that Stephen just said, and I thought he did a really nice job laying, out the high level issues. And as everybody will find as they quickly delve into PJM issues, there are a lot of details here that really matter a lot, and it's as you drill down, the issues get more and more complex and interesting. But maybe let me respond with 2 thoughts. One from a very Pennsylvania-centric perspective. And looking at the history of Pennsylvania, as Terry mentioned, he and I were involved with the restructuring of the Pennsylvania electricity industry in 1996. And what did we do in 1996? We basically took generation out of utility rate base and moved it to the competitive market. And instead of having utilities building generation, instead of having, basically the way it used to work is utilities would come to the commission and say, hey, we think we need more power. There'd be a debate over whether that was true or not. If the commission decided, yes, there was power needed, then there'd be a debate about what the plant would look like, how much it would have cost, and who would pay for it. It was a complicated process, took multiple years to get addressed, but that's how generation got built in Pennsylvania. Since 1996, that model is entirely out the window, and we rely on the competitive market to provide resource adequacy in Pennsylvania. And the vision of that was, if we go in that direction, we can use competitive market forces to really drive down the price, and we should be able to maintain reliability. And if you look at it from just a Pennsylvania perspective, it's been, and many of you have heard me say this before, it's been a big success. Our rates are down compared to their national average. You look at our carbon emissions, I'll put them up against any state in the country. The environmental progress has been terrific. And probably what's not appreciated the most is over that time, over the 20-some years, 30-some years we've restructured, we've built in Pennsylvania alone an 18 gigawatt surplus. So what does that mean? Pennsylvania's peak demand, so right now it's still the hottest day in the summer. Eventually it's going to be the coldest day in the winter. But right now, in the hottest day of the summer, 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon in August, when it's 102, Pennsylvania's demand is about 26 gigawatts, okay? Right now on the system, installed capacity on the system is about 44. So that's an 18 gigawatt surplus that we have in Pennsylvania. And what's that huge surplus doing? It's actually keeping other states afloat, because as Pennsylvania has really increased its reserve margins as a state, other states have fallen dramatically behind and are relying more and more on Pennsylvania for that power. If anybody wants to go on their phone right now, I give you permission to do it. Google PJM Import-Export Map. You can get a real-time data of what's going on the grid right now. And what you'll see is Pennsylvania is exporting enormous amounts of power to other states. This has been an economic development opportunity for Pennsylvania. We've gotten the jobs associated with construction. These facilities are operating in Pennsylvania. This has been a positive story. But I think probably the untold story, and Senator, y'all touched on this a little bit, is that, really, as state policies pursued in other states, as Stephen alluded to, have really driven resources out of the market. Pennsylvania has mostly embraced policies that have brought resources into the market, and that is a good thing. And I think there's an argument to be made that, but for Pennsylvania and the moves we made with restructuring, this region would be in real trouble right now. And honestly, PJM is not the only region dealing with these dynamics that Stephen described. In a lot of respects, PJM is one of the best regions in the country. You want to talk about regions that are really in trouble when it comes to supply-demand dynamics, go to the Midwest, go to the Southwest, go to Texas, go to California. There's a lot of areas of this country that are really facing a supply-demand crunch that's a lot worse than what we're experiencing here in the PJM region. But with all that said, the dynamics that Stephen laid out are 100% true. We are seeing shrinking supply. We are seeing increasing demand. It's funny, the 4R report really echoed a lot of themes at the committee hearing that Senator Hall, y'all had 6 months before that report came out. So in many respects, certainly Senator Y'all and Pennsylvania has been ahead of this conversation. And as Stephen also mentioned, the prices for the capacity market were up based on what we've seen in the last couple of years. I think there's a very good argument to be made that those prices were too low to begin with because of a bunch of reasons that we could get into. But the bottom line is this market is going to start to send signals that more supply is needed. And I think the question is, how will Pennsylvania answer the call? And we've already seen some examples. I mean, the TMI example jumps to mind as at least one response. I can point to other responses from other states, but, I think there is activity going out there. I'm hearing a lot of conversations. We're getting a lot of calls as a consulting group, people looking at projects, interested in doing things. So I think there is a real opportunity for Pennsylvania here to increase that legacy. We're going to need support from PJM. We're going to need support from FERC, but I think this is a real Pennsylvania opportunity. It's certainly a challenge. I think it's important for Pennsylvania to keep pressure on other states to do their fair share. There's a law right now in Illinois that's going to take 6,000 megawatts of natural gas off the system just because they decide to do that as their state policy. Those are 6,000 megawatts that are really needed for the grid right now and could potentially increase the prices for other in the region. So keeping the pressure on other states to do the right thing and recognizing it as an opportunity for Pennsylvania, I think is a real path forward here for the Commonwealth. And, Pennsylvania has a great history of rising to the challenge. I have no doubt it'll be able to do so again.
A lot of comments that I can talk about. I disagree with Stephen. He said that he mentioned 2 years ago that we have time, but we don't have time to waste. He's wrong. It was 3 years ago. It'll be 3 years ago this December. Glenn has a energy conference in New York City as part of the Pennsylvania Society, and it was 3 years ago that PJM said we have time, but we don't have time to waste. Unfortunately, in my opinion, we've done virtually nothing to fill this gap. I know. I'm assuming that everybody knows how PJM fits into this whole thing, but there are two ways to produce electricity: thermal and non-thermal. There will be a quiz on this. So, and what's happening is thermal is that power which is available 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, 365. Doesn't matter whether it's raining, doesn't matter what's going on outside, snowing or whatever, night, day, it's there. What we're prematurely retiring for various reasons, a lot of them policy reasons, some of them based on environmental issues, supply, but we're retiring that thermal capacity, and what it's being replaced with is the non-thermal, which is intermittent and limited duration. I'd like to take credit for this, but I was told recently that the CEO of Constellation said one of the problems that we have is we can't run a full-time economy with part-time power. Just think about that. And that's what's happening. We're retiring these plants like Homer City and those, and we're not replacing it with a comparable type of production. Glenn mentioned what some of the states are doing. Like Illinois has decided we're going to go all green. Well, we got involved, and actually PJM actually asked us to get involved as a production state. They hear a lot from those states that want to go, I'll say green, I don't mean that disrespectfully, but just they want to use solar, wind, and everything like that. Mainly that's New Jersey, Maryland, and Illinois. The producers, we sat back and we weren't saying much. Well, we started to get involved, and we started to work, and my committee started to work with a group from Ohio, legislators from Ohio. We had a hearing in Pittsburgh. We had another one in Columbus. We're now reaching out to West Virginia also. And as to what happens because what happens in those states, and Maryland is a really good example because it's closer to Pennsylvania. The environmental issues have an impact, and they have an impact on Pennsylvania. The way we got involved with Ohio was, okay, Illinois, you're going to retire all your coal plants and your older gas-fired power plants. They're not be online. Okay, where are you going to get the electricity from? You're going to import it. Okay, you have to import it. What happens to import it? You have to reconstruct, upgrade all the high voltage transmission lines. They came through Ohio, and Ohio says, wait a minute, why should our ratepayers pay because Illinois wants to adopt a certain environmental stand? Well, probably a good question, and that's what we became involved in. With that same issue is happening, it affects Pennsylvania. There's a power plant right outside of Baltimore, Brandon Shores, which has, long story behind it. They were talking to PJM, telling PJM they were going to convert, I think, from coal to oil. And all of a sudden they pulled the plug and said, oh, we're not doing that. We're going to close the plant in June of 2025. Okay. Brandon Shores is about a 2,200 megawatt power plant. Primary source for Baltimore. I mean, where are they going to get the power? Well, okay, we're going to import it, and some of it will come from Pennsylvania because we have excess capacity. And there's a whole history behind this, but PJM had to do a presentation or make a proposal to FERC as to how are you going to make up this difference? How are you going to import? What's going to happen? What lines need to be reconstructed or built, or new lines, in order to provide the power that Baltimore is not going to be producing, or that area, the Brandon Shores is not going to be producing. And I think if the dates I have these correct, I think that FERC approved the proposal that said, okay, the line reconstruction and upgrades will be done in 2028. Oh, well, okay, the plant's going to close in 25, the lines will be done in 28. What happens in the meantime? Stephen can talk about that. There's an RMR requirement. I don't even know whether that's finalized yet. But the cost of that is $800 million. About 20% of that is going to fall, to some extent, on ratepayers in Pennsylvania. So we are a victim of what happens in other states, and that's one of the comments that, that's become pretty prevalent here. Stephen mentioned it, Glenn mentioned it, is like these policies that are made by the states to say, well, we want to do this without thinking about what are the ramifications long term. That's a problem. And I think that that's kind of where we are right now. We need to think through what we're doing and the impact. I'd love the position that Pennsylvania's in. Toby mentioned, yeah, we have excess capacity, but it's like having a bank account or having a savings account. If you have to keep using your savings account for your daily operational expenses, eventually you lose that. I would love to have a greater capacity. And we are looking at some things like that. Hopefully we can streamline some of the things and make Pennsylvania more attractive for people to come here and build generation capacity.
Yeah, I'm going to pile on a bit here. Some great comments from the other panelists here. Stephen, I think set a lot of the groundwork here, or the background about what happened. I want to say we're talking about the most important energy issue facing the Commonwealth here. Talking about reliability of the grid, talking about whether we're going to have enough electric generation to meet our needs in a few years. And, let me preface my remarks by saying, from the standpoint of the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, whenever you're talking about energy policy, you need to keep three things in mind. Three important considerations. Energy needs to be affordable, it needs to be reliable, and it needs to be environmentally sustainable. You need to maintain a balance of all of those things. If you start pursuing one to the point where the others suffer, you're going to have real problems in your policy. And I think we're kind of on the cusp of that, and that's part of the problem. If you went back, Stephen gave the fact that 98% of what's in PJM's interconnection queue is intermittent resources and battery storage. If you went back 10 years, it was a very different story. 10 years ago, I don't know the exact percentage, but most of what was in that interconnection queue was natural gas-fired generation. So what happened in 10 years that we went from mostly gas that wanted to build here to now where there's almost no gas that wants to come forward? Well, and the answer is, as had been alluded to, it's the fact that a lot of states changed their policies. In the 1990s, when we restructured in Pennsylvania, we weren't the only ones that did that. Maryland did it, New Jersey did it, Illinois did it, and some other states did it. And the goal at that time was we want low prices. We want low prices for electricity. They're too high. So we want to rely on markets to get these low prices. And that was fine. But then around the year 2000, the policy started to change. And I think it probably started in California. A lot of bad ideas start in California, particularly on energy. I don't want to bash the Golden State. It's a beautiful place. But, that's when things started shifting towards climate. And, a lot of other states did it. Maryland, New Jersey, we talked about the law in Illinois. Now, Pennsylvania. Okay. Pennsylvania also passed a renewable, the Alternative Energy Portfolio Standards Act, which says that 8% of our power would come from renewables. But that's pretty modest, really. I testified on that. I was the chairman at the PUC at the time that was up for consideration. And I wasn't really a big booster of it, but I said, well, this is fine. It's going to give a kickstart to these sources in the market. That's fine. But a lot of states went way beyond that, way beyond that. Well, the trouble is, can you really make a market work when you have all of these states putting their thumbs on the scale, giving preferences, mandates, subsidies for certain types of resources? I mean, if you're a natural gas developer, you're sitting back. And I have a feel for this because I remember talking to them when I was with the Electric Power Generation Association, companies that were thinking about coming into PA and building here. Well, look at the message you're sending to them. You're giving you've got this anti-fossil fuel movement. You've got state policies that are mandating and subsidizing your competing resources to you. And, just one small thing here. A couple of years ago, and let me preface this and say I'm not a Joe Biden hater. I'm not a hater of the president. But he made the comment, well, we're going to need fossil fuels for a few more years. And I was listening to that and I'm thinking, man, if you're somebody who builds natural gas plants, you need to get your money back over a couple of decades. And you got a few more years where you're going to be needed. So I think the cumulative effect of all of these policies, you're seeing it right now. These developers have said, this is not a good market, for us to get involved in because of all of this. Now, that's the problem. The question is, what's the solution? And I want to applaud Senator Yaw. I mean, he's been a leader on this, on pointing to this problem. I mean, he's looking for solutions. I know he came out with a proposal to start a Pennsylvania Energy Fund. We're neutral on that. I don't know if that's the best idea, but I certainly want to applaud the fact that he's looking for answers to this because he sees the problem. Should the state get more involved? Have the government now having gotten so involved in this market? One of the architects of electricity competition was a professor named Bill Hogan from Harvard. One of the things he said years ago was, beware of the government intervention that begets more government interventions. Well, that's what we have here. Government haven't gotten so heavily involved. Does government have to now subsidize or do something to help the resources that we need to keep the lights on? I think that's kind of the dilemma that we're facing right now, and I'll let it go at that.
Thanks. So we kind of talked a little bit about at a higher level that things need to be done. And Terry mentioned Senator Yaw's proposal. And I know PJM has also taken some steps to start to try to address the issue. Can you each kind of speak as to specifically the steps that we're currently taking? And here in Pennsylvania, Senator Yaw, maybe speak to some of your legislation, such as your proposal to establish the PA Energy Fund to incentivize the baseload plants. And then, Stephen, if you could speak a little bit to what PJM has already kind of said that they would like to do to take steps and address this.
Yeah, thank you. The whole idea is, what do we have to do to get more generators to come and build in Pennsylvania? To be very honest about it, that I just get depressed when I see what other states are doing. West Virginia, you've heard our governor, talk about he doesn't like to get his ass kicked by Ohio, and well, we're going to get it kicked by West Virginia, frankly. West Virginia has, a couple of years ago, they did some legislation that supported the coal industry, number one, and then they did more legislation, I forget the title of it, but it has to do with grid reliability. They're encouraging the construction of combined cycle gas-fired power plants. And there's one that's planned now for West Virginia. It's I think, $3.3 billion project. I forget how many megawatts. It's a huge power plant. And that's where it's going to go. It's going to go to West Virginia. You talk to the trade unions in the Pittsburgh area and ask them where the jobs are. They're not in Pennsylvania. Very good question is, why don't people want to come to Pennsylvania? Which is why we said, okay, let's try this, an energy fund. Texas did that. Texas did an energy fund to encourage investment in generation. And they originally funded it with $5 billion. It was oversubscribed to the point where they increased it to $10 billion. So they're doing something to encourage people to come there and build generation capacity in Texas. No reason we shouldn't be doing it here, except one reason, and many, many generators have told me this. The reason they don't come to Pennsylvania, RGGI, the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative that Governor Wolf I mean, I understand he thought it was the best way to go or something that was good to do for the environment. He tried to put Pennsylvania in RGGI in 2019. There has not been a thermal powered generation plant even built in Pennsylvania since 2019. In the 10 years before that, I think we had like $14 billion worth of construction. I mean, it's as simple as that. We're not business friendly in that regard. Why should a power plant or a generator come here and build and say, by the way, we have a new tax for you? I mean, that's so there's two things that we're trying to do. I mean, if we can put RGGI to bed once and for all. The other thing about RGGI, I'll just explain this also. RGGI is a kind of a north-south collection of states, New York, Massachusetts, Vermont, all that way up through New England, all the places that won't let us put in a pipeline so that we can ship gas there. Instead, they would prefer to buy it from foreign countries. For a long time, they were buying gas from Russia. In any event, the RGGI group is kind of that direction. I look at PJM, which we're part of, and I think Stephen mentioned is 13 states plus the District of Columbia. We're kind of an east-west operation. So the irony of RGGI is that you would have north-south, all these states, the New England states, dictating to some extent how we generate power that we're going to sell or distribute east-west. That alone says that that's a bad idea. So anyway, those are some of the things that we're working on.
Yeah, so a couple of things for PJM as we've identified this concern with adding additional capacity to the grid. After Winter Storm Elliott, we recognized that there were a couple of things that we needed to change and fix about our markets. We needed to do a better job of modeling winter risk. Glenn mentioned it. Generally, PJM has been a very summer-focused, summer-peaking territory. But we're seeing more and more of the risk manifest during the winter, in those cold winter nights when solar's not available to us, when we have these increasingly significant winter weather events like Elliott and Uri and polar vortexes. So we needed to make sure that our risk modeling took that into consideration in a better, more efficient way. And by doing that, that actually drove some of our requirements up. So our reserve margin that we needed to keep to manage the risk and uncertainty went up. What we also recognized is that generators behave differently, all generators behave differently in different weather. There's no perfect generator. There's no generator that is 100% available all the time, but they have different characteristics. And we had to do a better job of making sure we were accrediting generation based on those characteristics. And again, the idea is on that hot summer day or cold winter night, are you available to us? And the more available you are, the higher your accreditation. So the more you get to offer into the capacity market, and the less available you are, or the more risk that you will not be available, a lower accreditation. So we made those changes. And the idea there is to make sure that the price signals that PJM markets are sending are more accurate. And they send the signal. So right now we need more capacity, and the price signal should be commensurate with that. So we needed to make sure that the market was designed to do that. We've had our first auction since we made some of those changes, and we are sending a price signal, and Glenn alluded to it, and we are getting the attention of developers that say, okay, that is a price signal that signals to me as a developer that I'm now interested in developing in PJM again. Not simply renewables, but maybe some of the other fuel and technology types as well. Well, the other thing about renewables, and I talked about having 98% of our interconnection queue being renewables, is that our queue was not designed for that. So our queue was designed for in the hundreds of projects, largely central station large generators coming in. We would study them, move them through, give them their agreement to interconnect. Well, now with the clean energy expansion that we're seeing thousands of projects. So thousands of smaller projects enter the queue. And quite frankly, it wasn't designed for that. It didn't do a good job of throughputting that amount of projects coming into the queue. So we worked with our stakeholders, we worked with FERC to change that. And right now we're going through a process where we're trying to work through what became a backlog of projects. The good thing is that we're going to study 237,000 megawatts of interconnecting generation by 2027. And just to give you an idea, we're about 180,000 megawatt system. So we're going to be studying, now this isn't accredited, this is nameplates, a little different, but we're going to be studying 227 gigawatts. So that's more than our entire system. But we also have a price signal out there right now that says, please build. So what we're also looking at is potentially trying to open up some of this transition period where we're working through that backlog to additional projects. So we're working with our stakeholders. We'll eventually have to work with FERC, which is the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, that's our regulator, to see if we can add some additional projects to that queue so that they can build. And we're focused on projects that would have a higher accreditation value, larger projects that can help with the resource adequacy issue and with the reserve margin. So those are some of the things we're doing from a markets perspective and some of the things we're doing from a PJM specific perspective. We're also working with the EPA. So PJM and a number of the other RTOs and ISOs in the United States have been negotiating with EPA on some of their clean energy rules. We have concerns that some of those clean energy rules are the things that are driving generation off of the grid and preventing new generation from coming onto the grid. So we've been working with the EPA to try to get them to understand the reliability impacts of their emissions goals. And again, PJM is not, we're not antagonistic to decarbonization at all. In fact, we're very hopeful that the PJM market platforms can help to leverage and actually make that transition reliable and cost effective. We want to see a decarbonized grid, but we also need to make sure that it's done reliably. And we need to work with the federal government and state governments so that those decarbonization goals don't endanger reliability. The last thing I'll say is Pennsylvania is a really great place for PJM. We have engagement across the policymaker universe in Pennsylvania that is stellar and exemplary. And I'll say that Governor Shapiro and his office has been engaged with PJM from day one. They're very concerned about price impacts on customers, and they're working with us to understand what they can do from the governor's office to help mitigate some of those pricing impacts while we increase reliability. And as been mentioned before, Senator Yaw has been leading on energy policy for years, at least 3 years, more than the 2 that I erroneously said, but longer. And Senator Yaw's office has been, he's been out in front of this in the hearings that he holds, his office, his staff, and the engagement with PJM. So, these are challenging times, but for all of you sitting here that live, work, and play in Pennsylvania, know that your policymakers are engaged on this. They are advocating for you, they are advocating for reliability, and they are advocating for cost effectiveness as well.
Yeah, 100%. And this panel is actually doing a great job of covering a lot of bases. So, and clearly the state policies matter. And, Senator Yaw identified a couple. We've seen other policies in other states that are detrimental to development, some in Pennsylvania. The point is, clearing those hurdles at the state policy level are going to be critically important. And then Stephen, at the federal end, getting the PJM rules, the FERC regulation right, that's the other really, really critical piece to the puzzle. And you guys are going to have to forgive me. I'm going to get a little PJM nerdy here, but I think it'll make a really important point on the market pricing and how important it is. And Terry mentioned how the queue has dried up except for renewable projects, and that's 100% true. But a lot of that is tied directly to the capacity prices. The capacity market in PJM, what the capacity market is under normal circumstances, we're not under normal circumstances right now, but under normal circumstances, PJM will look out 3 years and say, here's how much power we think we're going to need. And then they secure commitments from generators, suppliers, capacity resources to meet those needs. So, and then they have an auction. So basically what PJM is saying, here's how much we're going to need. Will you commit to being there? And you get paid to be there. It's like an availability payment, a call option. There's a lot of ways to describe it, but basically it's a commitment from the generator to be there 3 years from now when PJM calls and says, we need you. And this market was designed to address the reliability question in PJM, because as we go to a competitive market, as I mentioned with the old model, it was a very different process. Here, PJM needed the ability to plan and look into the future and see what their needs look like, so they created this capacity market. The capacity market was designed to clear, the price produced in that capacity market was designed to be around the cost of new entry. So PJM will say, here's how much we think a hypothetical plant will cost, and that's called the cost of new entry. And the market was designed to clear at that price over time. The last 3 auctions cleared at 10%, 12%, and I think 18% of net cone. So that just tells you how far away those capacity prices were from a build signal. Capacity market prices at those levels are saying, if you exist now, get out, and certainly don't look at building if you're going to depend on those signals. The last auction cleared slightly above 100% of net cone. That is a build signal. That's a signal to say, get in the market. That's a signal to say, if you can stick around this market. And we've already, like I said, excuse me, we've already seen that activity. We've seen generators withdraw deactivation notices. We've seen generators, we've seen the TMI examples, we've seen generators announce plans to reinvigorate development efforts, and I think we're going to see more. I'm sure some people in this room remember Bob Bittenbender. Bob Bittenbender was the budget secretary during the Ridge administration. He was the Senate budget director for a while, one of those Harrisburg legends, and he had a sign in his office that said, nothing stimulates the imagination like a budget cut. And he was brutal about that. But, nothing is stimulating the imagination of generators like a high capacity price. And we're seeing that right now. Like I said, these auction prices just cleared in July. We were supposed to have another auction in December. That's looking like it may be in June. But I think if you start seeing capacity market signals that suggest, hey, it's time to stay in this market, and not only that, expand in this market, we'll see the supply respond. That's going to be sort of the challenge. Let's have this conference again next year at this time. Maybe we'll have more capacity auctions under our belt, and we'll see what type of activity it's stimulated. But certainly, early indications are that people are responding to that price signal.
Yeah, briefly here. I want to mention another kind of general policy idea that we emphasize at the Energy Association. We are in favor of an all-of-the-above approach to energy. Now, Governor Shapiro, has said he's in favor of that as well. Probably Senator Yaw would agree with that general principle too. 98% renewables and storage in the PJM interconnection queue is not all of the above. And we're talking about how do we address that? And, PJM, I'll applaud them. I think they're trying to do the right thing. They keep trying to tweak their market rules, really, to overcome the problems that are being caused by these energy policies, which are so tilted towards climate and not pursuing it in the right way either, that they're messing up the market. Now, is that going to work? Glenn talked about the build signal. I agree, it is a build signal. What's going to be enough to get generators to come forward? I think that is the question. PJM is trying to push a very heavy stone up the hill. That's my impression because of all these policies. PJM called it out. I'm sure they didn't like doing this in their 4R report. They talked about Illinois' law, which mandates the closure of coal and gas plants. They talked about some policies in New Jersey, some other state policies. I think Pennsylvania got left out of that, and that was good. that was very good. But the ultimate question is what PJM is doing and what Glenn was talking about, the higher prices, which are a build signal, is that going to be sufficient to get it done? I think that's what we need, or does the state need to intervene in some other way to try to get things built? That's really the big question that's before us.
Just a couple of comments. About 10 years ago, I think it was, I had a conversation with PJM, don't remember who it was at the time, but one of the comments was Pennsylvania at that time had almost the perfect mix if you're talking about a diverse energy portfolio. we had about 32% gas, 32% coal, 32% nuke, 4% renewable. While Toby was talking this morning, I have an app on my phone. I'm so into this stuff that I can check what what's in the grid, what the production is. When Toby was talking, we had 46% of our electricity was gas, 34% nuke, and still 10% coal. And guess what? 4% was renewable. And of that 4%, less than 2 was solar. So my point is that in this 10 years where we have heard all about we're going to have solar panels and we're going to have windmills and we're going to do all this, clean, whatever clean or renewable energy is, the net result has been virtually zero as far as a change. In fact, it's gone the other way, that we're now depending more and more on either nuke or gas or coal, still coal. I just thought that was interesting. One other comment is, I agree with Glenn, what the market has done. I know we're getting conversations now of people that are interested in taking a look at Pennsylvania for construction of generation plants. And that's the first time I've heard that since 2019. So they're actually maybe interested in taking a look at it.
So PJM Now is the app. I'm going to commercial break. So if you want the app where you can see what's on the grid, what are the imports, exports, what are the prices, you can get alerts on extreme weather. PJM Now, it's available for your Apple and your Android device.
Great. So as we're coming close to time here, I want to thank you all for this amazing conversation. It's something that is very important to us as the wonks that we are here on stage, but not only to us, but everybody out there who consumes power on a daily basis. So I just want to take this opportunity to give you a few closing thoughts, kind of how to wrap things up, and then we'll proceed on.
Okay. I think that what we talked about, obviously, we could pick any particular subject here and probably talk about it all day long. I think that just recognizing, the position that we're in is something you need to do. And I kid PJM about this all the time. They're their own worst enemy. They're required to take a whole bunch of hodgepodge of electrics generated. Some of it's hydro, some of it's, solar, some of it's wind, some of it's nuke, and put it all together and then, transmit that to the place where it's needed. And I run into this all the time is people look at me well, the lights are on. I feel like Chicken Little and the sky is falling, sometime talking about this, but it's something that we really need to pay attention to. I appreciate the fact that the Chamber has done this, because the only way we can get the word out is more and more people need to understand. If you ever get a chance to tour PJM, you need to do it. It is a fascinating operation in Valley Forge. I'll leave you with one other thought. Name me just one clean or renewable energy project that does not depend on fossil fuel. Just one. Thank you.
I got a water wheel in a creek in my backyard. Not really don't, but yeah, it's a fair point.
How was the water wheel made?
Yeah, okay. Would I chop down? I don't know. No. It's a stretch. All right. Maybe I'll end on like a more optimistic note. And I just, again, putting on my Pennsylvania hat, I just, one of the opportunities that I'm blessed with in my job is I get to work in a lot of other states and see how different states operate. And I think about how Pennsylvania has just operated when it comes to energy policy over the last 30 years. And it's largely been a very thoughtful endeavor. I see my friend Gladys Brown-Dutrell back there. I think about the leadership at the PUC, both Republicans and Democrats, who have been so committed to these core values of a competitive market and moving Pennsylvania forward, in a very thoughtful way. I see Pat Cicero. I think about the, consumer advocates that we've been blessed with in Pennsylvania. And really, when you compare, sort of the leadership in offices like Pat's in now and the Public Utility Commission, as well as the legislature, the governor's office, Pennsylvania really has distinguished itself as an energy leader, particularly in the Mid-Atlantic region, but I would even argue in the country, maybe even the world, as Toby Rice in the center suggested, because of the thoughtful policies that we pursued here. We have some challenges ahead. We've addressed tough issues before. We got some really tough issues staring us in the face, but I really believe if Pennsylvania, we have tremendous resources. We have, really solid roots and foundation upon which to build upon. I have no doubt that this Commonwealth can rise to the occasion. It's going to be tough, but at the end of the day, I continue to believe there's going to be a lot of power being made in Pennsylvania and a lot of people coming to Pennsylvania because of that power that's going to be available to them here. So let's roll up our sleeves, let's get it done, but I have every optimistic view that we were going to be able to do so.
So for PJM, there's a couple of things that when we do presentations, at state houses and things like that, just a couple recommendations that we have. The first is, as legislators, as policymakers make policy, they're looking to decarbonize. If you're looking to expand the green and clean energy on your grid, just please make sure that you take reliability into consideration. Don't push generation off of the grid until you have full replacement energy and capacity available. When we put all of our eggs in a single basket on a new or unproven technology, there's a risk there. So make sure there's safety valves. Make sure there's a mechanism as you move forward to maintain reliability if the technologies or the things that you're looking for to be replacement energy aren't available. The second thing is, and I think this probably applies to this group, pretty significantly, is work with your policymakers to take away obstacles to permitting and siting. Enhance the supply chain. Do whatever we can to make sure that we have everything we need to lay the infrastructure down for reliability. That is transmission, that's distribution, that's transformers, substations, generation, pipelines, everything that we can possibly get into place to make sure that we have all of the infrastructure we need to keep the lights on, and to keep the lights on at a cost-effective level. And then the things that we ask of our policymakers, and again, I do want to really reiterate, you are represented by people that are engaged on this issue. And Pennsylvania has done, to Glenn's point, a wonderful job from a policy perspective. Pennsylvania is not really one of the states that we're too worried about PJM. We didn't cite to PJM in our we did not cite to Pennsylvania in our 4R report because there are no policies here that really are driving generation off the grid. But policymakers, if you can, please help us voice the concerns about reliability to the federal government. They listen. The federal government listens to the states. So, if you have an opportunity to interact with EPA, if you have an opportunity to interact with FERC, with the administration, make sure that they know that reliability and cost-effective reliability is a huge priority for the state, and that, again, decarbonization is a good thing, but it needs to be done reliably and it needs to be done affordably.
Yes, we're talking about grid reliability. Well, we've been properly focusing on generation here. But the grid really is everything from that generating plant through the wires, the transmission system, the distribution system into your home or your place of business. electric and gas utilities have done a whole lot over the last 10, 15 years to put more money into their systems. We had some helpful policy changes by the General Assembly that gave us more incentives to do that. With the low energy prices we were blessed with, due to the Marcellus Shale, frankly, over the last 15 years, we've taken advantage of that and put a lot more money investments into our system. We've got more to do there, but that has been a good thing. Transmission, I think investment has been up there too, although you'll hear there needs to be a lot more transmission in the country as well. But a lot has been done to focus on that. Now, electric utilities are not involved in generating electricity, since the restructuring law. But you talk about the grid, you can't really separate everything has to work in order for your lights to come on when you're at home. And we're very conscious of that. So, we want to be, like Glenn said, we want to be very much involved in this discussion going forward about what it really takes to keep energy reliable, affordable, and environmentally sustainable in the Commonwealth.
Great. And as we wrap up today, I want to again thank you all very much for joining us. Certainly appreciate the expertise of the panel today. So for everybody else, now we're going to take about a half an hour network break, refreshment break. You'll have a chance to visit with some of our exhibitors, both here in the lobby. At 11 o'clock, there will be 2 breakout sessions. Track 1 will be water issues and PFAS. That will be held here in the general session room. While track 2, which is air issues, greenhouse gas emissions, will be held in the Chestnut and Dogwood rooms on the first floor. So everybody, thank you again very much and enjoy your break.
Thank you.